guys, Sugar Karina here, and happy blessed Monday! I love how it's the month of our Sacred Heart of Jesus, and like there's so much blessings to come. Because this weekend, this Friday is the feast day of Sacred Heart of Jesus, and Saturday is the feast day of our Immaculate Heart of Mary. Right there. Yep. That's why I'm like super excited for this weekend, because really it's like full of showers of blessings for us to really just keep on taking it all in. So that's why we just have to look forward to this weekend and prepare ourselves for what's to come and for the blessings to come, really. And it's so important that we prepare ourselves, really, because we can't just sit around and do nothing. We constantly have to be very proactive. Like for Christ, even though we have to do social distancing at its finest right now, I know all of us cringe because all of it, yes, I'm probably sure you guys seen each other, but you just have to maintain that distance. And it just feels like, seriously, you're just in that time that you just have to maintain this distance, and you're like, no, I don't like distance. I just want to go to you. I'm probably sure you're feeling not the pain, but just that point within yourself thinking okay, when is this gonna be over? So that's why you don't begin to mope. You begin to thrive more. You begin to deepen your trust more. You begin to place more of your hope, your trust, and your faith and love in God even more. Because, again, we have to believe firmly and stand firm in our faith, in our hope and trust and confidence in God, no matter what storms and trials and tribulations surround us. It's very important that we keep that thought and that concept at the back of our minds, because that keeps us running towards Christ. That keeps us striving. That keeps us being proactive, and not becoming lukewarm in our faith. Because yes, there's so much chaos that is constantly spinning in this world, but then, we should not allow the spinningness of this world overcome us, but rather we should be that steady cross of Christ in the midst of the spinning world, as Cardinal Thomas Collins said. So amazing. I love how Cardinal Thomas Collins, he has the finest that I've heard so far, so concise, but it's so on point. It's like a sword to the fine point. So just remember that, allow yourself to stay firm and strong in that steady cross of Christ in the midst of the spinning world. So I hope you've been well. Again, thank you so much for being here. I know, again, it's social distancing, very well, but if you know me in person, we will meet again for sure, in God's due time. That's one thing that we just have to keep on reminding ourselves, that it's in God's due time, not in our time, but in God's due time. So therefore, when you have stuff to say that comes from the heart, meaningfully, is that a word? Yeah. In a meaningful way, in other words, just save it. Because really, I'm sure everyone in this English-speaking world, or in this world, loves to have people say beautiful things said to another person in person, face to face. So really, it's really beautiful to have that form of expression, the human form of expression of ourselves. So that is why, yes, online can be exhausting very much, but that's what we have to do right now. So with that said, stay strong and firm in your faith. And as I always love to say in all my videos, let's get started. I want to talk to you guys about embracing God's will with calmness. Yes, embracing God's will with calmness. It's very important that we constantly maintain that zealous, that fervence, that perseverance, that fire of illumination, but with calmness, though. Because really, yes, those trials and tribulations can rattle us up very much. one way or another, and making us feel very restless because we're just feeling like, oh, we want to do this, but then the current circumstances are not allowing us to do as we please. So therefore, that's why it's very important for us to stay calm with Christ, to stay calm for Christ, to stay calm with God, and our Blessed Mother Mary, Saint Joseph, all the angels and archangels and saints. And so really that's why, with that in mind, embracing God's will with calmness means to have that practice of self-abandonment. That practice of self-abandonment, and to forsake ourselves for nothing less, unless, it's really important though, because, surrendering our own will into God's hands is one thing that is tough for each and every one of us, because it's just like placing into the unknown, and yes, like you want answers, just like, right? But then, but giving it to God though is the best way to do it. Best way to do it. But you have to do it with love though. You can't just be like, hey God, take it. But then at the same time, you're just like you're just feeling so uneasy and so restless in that process. So that's why, as time progresses, as you go along that journey, you have to be able to know from the bottom of your heart that when you're actually surrendering into God's hands, you have to know from the back of your mind and from the bottom of your heart that you're actually doing with love and trusting that it's going to flourish and it's going to be that seed that will grow and bear fruit and will be like nothing you've ever expected. Looking back now, like in my previous years of my life, like I've really come to the point where there's a lot of times I could have just surrendered to God, but really I was just very stubborn to the point where I'm just like, it's my way or the highway, right? And learning from those lessons, I could have learned my lesson earlier, but God has his timing. God has his time to really just be like, Karina, you're doing your best, but just surrender now, and a lot of the times it's just no. Like I told myself no, like I don't want to. I know, doing me. But at the same time though, I've learned eventually. And through those trials and tribulations though, that's where I've really learned very hard. And that's why I really want to share it with you guys. If you're the type that's very, let's just say, the queen of stubbornness, or it's like my way, their highway kind of mentality, honestly, it's not going to take you anywhere. It's just going to take you to more, let's just say, more crosses and more troubles to come, because it just makes you feel uneasy, and the more reason the enemy will just constantly pounce on you left, right, center, and it's just gonna be that constant endless struggle back and forth between you and God, and really you really don't want to go there because you're just gonna feel so heavy, not physically but just emotionally, spiritually, and you don't want to have that feeling in your heart of heaviness. Right? So that's why, running to our Blessed Mother Mary is the number one thing that I highly recommend for all of you to practice, because she allows you to endure all of your crosses and all of your trials and tribulations so peacefully. Even though you may be in that waiting and that unknown time of just waiting for something that you want so fervently in your heart, she makes it feel like it's like, so I don't know how to explain it. It's just like that inner peace in your heart, that you're following the plan of God. That you're following the plan that Christ, our Blessed Mother Mary, and God has in store for you. And for sure that what's at the end of that waiting is the best that you've never seen. Really, to add on to that though, it would be no benefit to renounce and to forsake ourselves if it is not done with the purpose of uniting ourselves to the divine goodness. So really taking that into context, it means that, if we renounce ourselves, surrender to God's will, but we don't do it for the right purpose, for God's will, then you're just fooling yourself. Really, at the end, it will literally lead to self-destruction, because you're going to lead to despair. You're just going to become lukewarm in your faith. And God knows you're probably just going to go into the world, the secular world, and immerse yourself in that. So that's what I'm saying. When you tell yourself you're surrendering to God's will and you're surrendering that plan to God's hands, you're doing that with love. You're doing that with full trust. And you're doing that knowing at the back of your mind that it's for the purpose of following the plan of God and not the plan of yourself. Because it's really key that we keep those three aspects in our mind when we tell ourselves, okay, I'm surrendering to God's plan. Because really this topic just came to my mind because there's a sister in Christ that I was speaking to over the last few days, and essentially she was feeling very restless with this plan that she's been praying about so fervently every single day. And essentially her spiritual director told her that it's just not of God, and it's controlling her essentially. And with that in mind, it really rang a bell to me that, when it comes to really surrendering to God's plan, it just made sense to me, and it just hit me that, like, you can't just surrender it and then just keep on expecting. You have to surrender it and just trust that God's leading you in that path. Because for me, honestly, from my own personal experience, like, as long as I feel the inner peace as I go through that journey, I know it's of God. But if I know that I feel this heaviness, this restless feeling as I proceed in that journey, I know it's just the enemy deceiving me in some way that it seems to be of God, but really it's just like making me feel very heavy. So therefore, I constantly seek out our Blessed Mother Mary every single day, so that it gives you that guidance, it gives you that strength and that grace to be able to endure that pathway and know for sure that it's the pathway of God. I personally told her that, like, I'm not your spiritual director, but from my understanding, from what I've learned so far, that you need to really recognize and acknowledge that, do you have that inner peace in your heart when you pray about this? Or when you pray about it, do you feel that burden, that heaviness, and that feeling that it just weighs you down? It doesn't actually lift you up and become closer and closer to Christ, right? Because essentially, when it comes to following the plan of God, right, and when you're actually praying for something so fervently, you have to really know that when you're going through this pathway, is it taking you closer to Christ, or is it taking you farther and farther away from Christ? Essentially, maybe in relationships too, like, when you discern about a certain person, you have to know and ask yourself the question, like, is this person actually taking you closer and closer to Christ, or taking you farther and farther away from Christ, right? Because I see a lot of my sisters in Christ, they compromise their own faith due to their emotions to their special significant other, and they end up rerouting their moral compass, and essentially it just leads them farther and farther away from Christ. So that's why, when it comes to really practicing that Christian Catholic pathway and that faith in your everyday life, you really have to be bold and just not deny Christ by turning away from the ways of Christ, but turning away to the world, right? So that's why just always ask yourself the question, is this person leading you closer to Christ or leading farther away from Christ? Because at the end of the day, if you want to potentially marry that person, you have to really know that, like, you really have to know at the bottom of your heart that you're growing with that person closer to Christ, right? And you have to have that goal to bring that person closer to Christ as you're in the sacrament of holy matrimony. So really, like, that's for relationships in itself. But when it comes to any plan, maybe your career or any of that sort, you really just have to think at the back of your mind, like, when you proceed with a plan, just surrender it. If you do an interview, surrender it and don't expect. Really, when it comes to surrendering ourselves, like when it comes to surrendering our plans into God's hands, we have to have that desire to abandon ourselves in order that we may leave ourselves at the mercy of God's will. At the mercy of God's will. Because, that's really important. We really have to leave ourselves in the mercy of God's will, because, that's allowing ourselves to practice, again, that act of humility knowing and acknowledging the fact that we're not following our own will, and we're not really just telling ourselves we can handle it on our own, but it's all through God's plan, right? Because, when it comes to the will of God, it includes following his commandments, his counsels, his inspirations, and the guidance of our spiritual directors. Yes, at times our spiritual directors will tell us one thing, but sometimes as well too, like when you really allow yourself to have that quiet and solitude time with God, you may be hearing something different. It happens really. And you see it too. Like you see various signs here and there, and it's all divine signs. I have to say, it's all divine signs. It's not something that's just like, look. No, it's really like through the works of God, the mysterious wonders of works of God. And that's why it's really important. Like when you surrender into God's will, that means following his commandments, following his counsel, his inspirations, and also the guidance of your spiritual director. Don't forget that. So really, like with God's will, it's for the good pleasure concerning events that we cannot foresee. The good pleasure concerning events that we cannot foresee. Because, again, just a friendly reminder, God can see the bigger picture. And we can only just see this much. Just today, tomorrow, yesterday. Right? Because I've learned very well, that we have to align our plans with God's plans. That's one thing I learned very well, and I want to share it with you guys very much, because the more you try hard to follow your own plans, the more it will not follow. Because when God wants you to be in a certain spot in your life, he will lead you there. And no matter how many times you keep on straying off, God's going to keep on leading you back there. And it's going to be tougher at times, because it's just going to be you dragging you out there and coming back here. It's just like right? It's going to be that not endless, but it's just that point where God's trying to enlighten your heart with love and mercy and grace, that my plan's always better. God's plan's always better. Because really you'll look back and you'll be like, oh, wow, so this is way better than I thought, So that's what I'm saying for me, for relationships or for your jobs, careers. Maybe you got an interview to this company, and then you didn't get the job, but then another better door opened for you. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why a lot of the times we just have to let God handle it all. And know at the back of our hearts, the back of our minds, and at the bottom of our hearts, that it's only for the good pleasure of concerning events that we cannot foresee. Because really, I don't think any of us foresaw this pandemic. So really, that's why when events happen before the pandemic, take it as a blessing though, and as a form of protection. Because really, like, maybe for relationships too, like when they may not essentially work out, before the pandemic, it's literally a protection. Because maybe for some people they cannot do relationships online, like LDRs, like long distance relationship kind of thing, and God can see all that. So really, if that happened, it's more like God's protection for those two people to just prepare themselves separately, so that when the time comes around, they will be prepared to be with each other again. It's so beautiful to have that imagery though, because, it's God's love story. It's not our love story. It's God's love story. So that's why if you're in that situation, really, like as I was saying, like we just have to, if you're in that situation though, you just have to allow yourself to really trust in God's plan and know that what's happening is happening within you. Especially with our Blessed Mother Mary, like she works in various mysterious ways within your heart. So our Blessed Mother Mary can really move your heart in ways that you're just like, wow. like that awe of just that beautiful wonder of how God works and how our Blessed Mother Mary works, how Jesus Christ works. And so just embrace it, just always remain perfectly indifferent when it comes to desolation and consolation. Always remain perfectly indifferent, because again, it's really it's trials and tribulations at times too, but embracing it with love is very key and important at times. All the time. So really, that's why the self-renunciation is the virtue of virtues. Self-renunciation is the virtues of virtues, because it really creates that fruit of perseverance. Fruit of perseverance. You know what I mean by perseverance? Is literally persevering through every single moment that you are blessed with, even if it's in your favor or if it's a trial and tribulation. I know it sounds so easy and I make it sound easy, but it's something that really contains a lot of patience, a lot of pruning, and a lot of surrendering into God's will. I always like to really encourage my other brothers and sisters in Christ to never lose hope and to never lose faith when times get tough. Because when times get tough, Christ is calling you out for greatness. Yeah, Christ is calling you out for greatness and for growth. Gigi, greatness and growth. So that's why, at first I used to firmly believe that, when I get a trial and tribulation, it's because I did something, but rather I changed that mentality, and it was a game changer. That's why I always want to encourage it out there very much, that when God permits things to happen, it's for the greater good. It's for greatness to come. And with God, anything is impossible. Anything is possible. My apologies. Yeah, anything is possible with God. So always remember that. So really, if you're praying for something so fervently, never give up. Always have that strength in your heart that, when you have that pureness of intention, when you're just constantly waiting for that perfect time to do something that you've been wanting to do so much for a long period of time, just tell God, okay, this is what I want to do. This I fervently want to do, and I know it will glorify your name. And I know you have the perfect timing for me to make that moment happen. It's having that confidence that that when I give this into your hands, you're going to make it blossom so much. Right? So that's why trusting in divine providence is very important, because it exceeds our own expectations. It exceeds our own wants and desires. When you want this, God will give you whoa. So with that in mind, always be happy when you abandon your plans into God's hands. Don't just be but no, just be here, have it. And I know it's for the greater good. I know that you will do wonders with it. I know you will prepare me for that desire that you're fervently placing in my heart all this time to fervently pray for so much every single day. And with that in mind, it's just allowing God to be taking care of you in a fatherly way. To really close off though, I want you guys to truly remember that trusting in the divine providence of God is what we should do in our everyday lives, no matter what that is. If it's you waiting for the perfect time, if it's you waiting for a job interview, or this whole social distancing, I personally am praying for the social distancing to be like over. No, really, I'm just done because as you guys can already sense, I'm very extroverted, and when it comes to meeting new people, like, I just take it all in. And so that's why, like, just keep praying for the social distancing to be over, and this pandemic especially, because it's so easy for us to get so lured into like the world's chaos, and then we forget about Christ, and then we begin to think like, oh, why is Christ allowing this to happen? Why is God allowing this to happen? Don't even go into that pathway, because really it's going to confuse you. It's going to just clutter your mind and blur your judgment, really, because God can see everything. God's never sleeping, just as the enemy is never sleeping. So that's why stay fervent, stay strong, deepen your trust in the divine providence of God's will, and allow yourself to immerse in God's love and mercy with no fail. No fail. I know waiting can be tough. I know it can be. But when you wait with love for God, that's what makes the difference. When you wait with love for God, and when you wait with the obedience and grace and power of Blessed Mother Mary and Jesus Christ, it makes all the difference. It makes your heart feel a lot lighter, and your heart feeling a lot better, because you're trusting more in God's hands, right? Rather than your own will. So, there you have it. I pray that you'll continually flourish and to bear fruit during this time for Christ and for God. And don't ever be worried. Don't ever be worried. Don't be afraid. Don't let your insecurities get to you. But rather embrace all the blessings that God gave you, no matter what that is. And use that to glorify God's name in every aspect that you can. That's all we can do, because that is our calling. That's our universal call to Christ and to holiness. And you can do it as long as you just tell God, okay, that unconditional yes is all that we need to do. And really, you can do it. It all starts from here and from here. For Christ. So, with that said, continue to flourish and bear fruit for Christ. And as I always love to say in all my videos, don't be afraid to be true warriors of Christ.